Right, so I think we are live or going live here, and today's session is on the features of an IDE, choosing the optimal IDE. And I'm just going to post this actual stream, so I'm going to share it out on social media as well. So I'm going to do a copy there and just paste that out onto social media. And so this is our YouTube session on an IDE. And what does it even stand for? In general, an IDE is an integrated development environment. And if I just get rid of that as well, I wonder if I can post it anywhere else. I won't. It's an integrated development environment. I stands for integrated, D for development, and E for environment. I'll probably zoom in on this, so Control plus a few times so that we can see it. This is quite an interesting site because it's got a good overview. So I'm going to use this as a template for going through things. Now, I've got an IDE over here. This one here is Visual Studio Code, and we can see kind of like there's a dark background and we can see some colorful text. We may or may not know what this all does, but we see some colors and some other things that might happen, and we'll look into that, like what is it. If I was to, and I wonder if I could do that, which is go for the IDLE, for example, Python IDLE for, I think actually this should be 3.12, but I'll pull out the old version anyway. 3.11. There's another type of integrated environment here, and we could do file and then like recent files, for example. Here's my hello world, and again we've got a different type of environment, and each one of these offers us some features as to what we can do. So that's kind of like what we're talking about. I could pull out a third one actually, Notepad++ if I can, Notepad++ here, and that's a third environment over here, so different types. There's already three that I've just got naturally sitting on my desktop, and they're all just environments where we can write code, but beyond that we can actually do a little bit more than just writing code. So I'll close these ones down because I could just write code in Notepad. So Notepad, just this one over here, I could literally just start writing my code here. So print hello world. And I could save this file, so I could do a file and then save as, and I could save it as a Python file, and it would be a perfectly valid Python file. I could save it exactly as is. So I'm not going to do that with this piece of code. In fact, I'll just get rid of it. But we're going to go through and have a look at the different features that are available. So let's just get rid of this shell too. The first thing is so what is it? We know that it's a place where we can do code. So we do know what it is. But then beyond that, like which ones are good and which ones aren't, because even in the space of the first, I don't know what it was, 2.5 minutes, I was able to show 3/4 environments where I could write code. One was the IDLE for Python, if I was coding in Python. One was Notepad++, which is valid for all different languages of code. Another one was Visual Studio Code. I'll keep this one open because I generally tend to use it the most. Again, which is for all languages of code. And then the final one was even I showed that we could have opened up a Notepad file and just written our code in a native Notepad file. Now, you might have thought, what's the difference between a native Notepad file? Like if I can do it in Notepad, why do I need this integrated development environment, this IDE? And the reason why is this, and it's pretty simple. Like if I start typing up PR for print, I don't get any help, I don't get any colouring, I don't get anything that's given out of the box. Whereas if I go over here and open up my VS Code, and I'll just do something that's quite easy and start a new tab somewhere, we don't have to worry about all of the pieces. But if I start typing PR, we see here we've got something like a menu type of system that pulls down and gives us a bunch of options, and I can choose to print by hitting tab, and then I can open brackets, and then we can see it's even read the help, it's coloured it in the yellow colour, so it's doing these extra things here. And then I can start to write some text like hello world like this and run this little block of code, and we can see we can even run our little piece of code. We've got different colorings, we've got oranges, we've got yellows. If I zoom in a little bit so that we can see this, oranges, yellows. We've got other things in our menu systems. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do, basically. And again, something like this, if I do just go over it, this is JSON, so a different language. It's JavaScript object notation. And we've got some syntax highlighting. We can see that the opening of braces is closed and it's given a color, so it's quite nice. The text is in a orange color, and the keys before the values are in a blue color, and the comments are in a green color. So there's all this type of stuff that's given to us out of the box that we get in an integrated development environment that we do not get in something like Notepad. So again, print hello world. I could have made a typo over here, it wouldn't have picked it up, nothing would have happened. Whereas if I went onto my IDE again and I attempted to do the same thing, so I'd start another block of code but I had a typo, we can already see before we've even got anywhere, we've got these squiggly lines over here, and we can hover over it and it's picked up what's called a linting error. It says it's not defined. There's some sort of linter. This particular one is Pylons because I'm using Python, and it says what's available, no quick fixes are available, and that's because we actually need to fix this. Maybe at some point, if the linter was a bit more intelligent, it might complete and put in the I for the print, but it has highlighted this message before we run this block of code, and if I do, I would have got this error, this name error, PRNT is not defined. So there's a little clue as to where the error actually was. So let's just jump back to the actual original website, which was over here, and it's got choosing an IDE. So let's zoom in a tiny bit more so we can see the text. What it says here is often an IDE will be included when installing a programming language. Whilst these default IDEs perform the key functions you need to edit and execute your code, some people prefer to use alternative IDEs that include a wider range of tools to help you develop your code. This type of IDE would be classed as a third-party IDE, meaning it was written independently by programmers and not in any way connected to the original. And I guess the best way of showing that was this is the one that comes with Python, and it's good enough to let you effectively let the user, so with my hello world one, I could take other things, but I'll just take that one. It's good enough to let the coder do some code. It's got some basic syntax highlighting, but for example, if I do PRI, it doesn't do an autocomplete. Unless I hit tab, then it does do an autocomplete. So it has some features. We can see here again, it's got some of the argument. It tells us what the arguments are, so the doc string effectively of our function, but it will miss many other features. So if I want to define a function, we see that the def keyword here turned in red, and then function that turned in blue. So we've got some nice syntax highlighting, but the brackets didn't close. I have to close them myself. But it does give us the automatic indentation that Python requires. So it's got some features and not others. It's a good starting point, but we'll see that there's much better integrated development environments available. But nevertheless, there's something out of the box that's offered to you, and that's what's defined as included when installing the programming language. So there are many open source projects that can be used. Most are platform independent and will support the development of programs in different programming languages. One of them that I have used, so Eclipse is another one, but I don't have it installed on this PC, so I can't show you. It's an example of a free and open source integrated development environment. It's quite good, but I have preferred Visual Studio Code because it works. It's got a slight benefit in other ways. It's available with extensions for a wide variety of programming languages. There are different downloads for the different operating systems, and the three major operating systems that most people are using are either Mac, Windows. Windows is probably the primary one, so it's Windows, Mac and Linux are the three major operating systems. Everyone has their preference to what operating system that they're using on. hardcore coders will tend to use Linux and possibly Macs. The majority of people do tend to use Windows. Windows comes shipped free with most PCs, so that will be again natively given out of the box. Is a Windows operating system that your IDE. So the IDE in any event would have to work on any of these operating systems for it to be satisfactory. But for example, I tried to use VS Code on Linux, and whilst I could get it working, there was a lot of things that I had to do, whereas the VS Code installation for Windows was very simple. So it's something like VS Code, and you could literally just go here and click on the download for Windows straight away. It was that simple. But then there was other things here. Linux comes with a couple of different flavors and a couple of extra nuances, depending on how or where you're running it. So that's that part of it. Then there's other ones here. So we've got a reference here. This is called JS Fiddle. It's an example of a free online IDE for web developers. That means that it's online, so you could open up a tab and use JS Fiddle straight out of the box, I believe. I wonder even if I could do this, which is search Google for JS Fiddle and click on it, and there we go. It's a little playground that I could probably write code straight into. So here we go. I can. So I wonder if I can do a console log and then a hello world over here. So I've got another IDE. I've never used this before. I've literally never seen it. I wonder if I can do a control return to run it. I can. It looks like I'm doing something, but I don't know if it actually ran anything because I don't see a hello world popping up here. But it looks like it's available and relatively simply out of the box, and there's quite a number of these online ones. Now they have advantages and they have disadvantages. One that one might use quite a bit in the Python sphere, which I have used, is the Jupyter Notebook, and that one does work straight off of the web. So that is the Jupyter Notebook. There we go. Let's see. You can see that I've visited here before, and you can sort of like try it in your browser, and possibly just click on one of these and effectively start coding out of the box. If it does start running, there we go. We can see that it's there, and we've even been given an example file, or a couple of examples. We've been given an example notebook here, and in fact, I think that this one here was probably that probably looks like my hello world over here that I've run. And this is inside of the browser. Try the notebooks tour. I don't need to do a tour, but let's just go here and do a new tab somehow or other, which is, that looks like a copy and paste. So generally speaking, I think it is, if I want to add something, well, let's just type in some code here. So print. And notice here, I don't get the IntelliSense straight away, so it's a bit annoying. If I do tab, I wonder what happens. Nothing. So that annoys me a bit, but I do get the colouring. And hi there. So instead of doing a hello world, I do a hi there this time, and I can run. I should be able to run my little snippet of code. I don't know why it's taking time. Run it. I'll hit the run button over here. Maybe that runs it. No, it doesn't. Run. No, it doesn't seem to be running anything, which is rather annoying. Control return, that hasn't run anything either. I possibly have to connect to the kernel, but these things do generally work. It's a tiny bit annoying. Why would they ever work when here you go. Select a kernel. Okay. Select. I don't know if that will make it run or not. Select the kernel. Let's try and run that. No. I would have thought the default one would be satisfactory. But nevertheless, anyway, we have an environment, and this will govern the choice of using it. If it works straight away out of the box very nicely, that you don't have to do anything for the user, you're going to be inclined to use it because it's just convenient and it does the job that you need it to do. Now, the online ones do have an advantage, which is that if you want to like change settings or something else and open it from another browser somewhere else in the world on a different PC, you can do that and it will look exactly identical. The disadvantage is that if you're using your file system or something like that, it might be a bit more mucking around with the system, because you might be using something like you might be using just something like OneDrive, for example, which you might need to connect to, or you might be using Google. From here you might be using the Google Drive, and again you'd need to be able to connect to it, and if you wanted to connect to your local PC, there'd be a different way as well. So there's pros and cons about doing that, but anyway, nonetheless, that's available for people. So all of these IDEs have improved massively over the course of the last few years, and they keep on improving, and they keep on getting more and more features and so forth. So and it ebbs and flows as to which ones are the best ones, but the most widely accepted at the moment, and I believe about 70% of the market uses it, is VS Code. And the reason why is that it basically has the most overall functionality. It's probably also the lightest and the quickest. So you know, I guess that's sort of like the main reason, and also it works for a multitude of languages, nearly every language, which we might go and look into afterwards. So most IDEs have highly customizable user interfaces with panels that you can configure, hide, reveal, and suit most of your workflows. You could do all of this stuff. And this was this JS fiddle, although I didn't get my version working, although I've got it open here on the side, like my one's a blank document. But maybe I needed to post some HTML up here to get it working, and some CSS possibly. So the first thing about it is the colored text. Figure is color coded, and that helps the user, right? It doesn't matter what language that you're in, but the statement blocks, and in this particular case here, it's telling us that the statement blocks here for the HTML, they're colored in this sort of like red color over here, and they can be collapsed to remove clutter and screen warnings and so forth. So, and again, if I just jump back now, and I will do, I'll probably make lots of references to this. If I was to make some sort of block of code, so here I will define a function, and you see some of the usability, because in VS Code we've got user snippets. Well, that's fantastic. I didn't have to type anything over there. I've got this little piece of code, and I could shrink my block of code with this little arrow. I've also got coloring. This is for a keyword. This is for another type of keyword. This is for a string, and this is for a third type of keyword. So, and if I was to do a for loop inside my function, so for, and again we can see that I've got something predefined. Again, we can see some colorizations. We can see that for is the same type of keyword as pass and in this statement, and range is a different type of keyword. In fact, we can see what it is here, and we get a little bit of a definition of how to use it. So lots of nice stuff out of the box, and in particular that was talking about collapsing of the function. Our functions could get quite long, or collapsing even of a for loop inside of the function. So it's got that extra ability. There is no single best IDE. I've recommended VS Code. I've mentioned over here that 70% of the market uses VS Code, but there's 30% of programmers that like to use other things for a whole variety of other reasons. I know a couple of coders that use PyCharm, and they are against using Microsoft products. They don't. They're against using VS Code, and they are adamant that PyCharm is built for Python bespokely, and therefore that's the IDE that they're going to work in. Other coders use PyCharm as well. It's actually a fantastic IDE on its own, although I have only ever used it once or twice. I do prefer VS Code. I like how it works, and I don't have an aversion to Microsoft. That might be one reason why people want to use something, because they like the company that it represents, or not. However, anyway, having said that, there is one consideration that may make it important. If you're taking an on-screen exam, it might be sensible to gain experience using the IDE of the school. Okay, fine, you will do, and also you might use the IDE if you're working in a company that other people in the company are going to be using. And the reason why is because you can get all of the hints and tips and everything else from them, and that's going to be the accepted environment. So it's not only down to the personal user's preference. It's down to the ecosystem that surrounds it. The ecosystem could be the other coders around it as well. The IDE that is provided as part of the original programming language software download will almost certainly include help files. Yes, and this is very true. This one here, I'm going to call it the stock IDE, the one that comes like pre-built in. That's generally speaking, if you have a problem or you first want to run something, let's just do that, but we'll do a print. Okay, well, this one for sure, if you have any queries about it, it will be the most native one. It should run. So it's kind of like the bare bones, basic example working version. So that's what we have with that. Now let's just move on here. It's got a text editor. Well, we've kind of like seen this already. A text editor is the window in your IDE that allows you to write your code. Remember that your program code is simply text that will be translated into machine code by an interpreter. So everything that we see on our actual screen over here is this is just text for us, that's for the humans, and this gets translated into machine readable code. And you might have already seen me, I'm tabbing through. I've got tabs here on my browser, so that's what that was referring to. If we look at the top section over here, I've got like little tabs. I'm in this particular tab, and here's some other tabs over here. You know, I've got a JSON file over here, I've got a text file over here, I've got a markdown file over here. So we can already see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, in fact I've got 6 different file types open in one IDE. It just shows how dynamic this is. Now 2 of them happen to be in Python code, another one happens to be JSON, and this one here happens to be in text. So let's actually just go and have a look and just see what is in this text. There we go, some text, because I was testing something out. The text doesn't get edited with any sort of colorization. Here's some markdown code, and the markdown code here we see has got some colorization for the markdown there. One single hash, double hashes and single hashes get colored, links to certain files and so forth get colored in a different way, and so forth. It's visually aesthetic to the eye. It helps the coder code, especially when the code is large. I wonder if I've got a lot. I haven't really got a large piece of code here at the moment, but we see that I've made a class in Python. My Python class has something called a data class. It's got a different color. This is called a decorator. We don't need to, like, I'm not here to teach people like what a decorator is, but it's something that describes the class, and it's colored in a different color. So we're just looking at the color. What we can see here is that all of these things here, first name, second name, height and weight, all have taken the color blue, whereas their actual types, a string, a float and a float, have all taken the color green. So there's something very definitive that's actually happening. And we can also see that a float was further down here. When I double click on it, all instances of the word float get highlighted. So there's other things as well that are available. And actually, if I go into this larger piece of code over here, we can even see that we've got this nice little thing on the side. If I highlight it, just nice little features, which is called the minimap. And I can go onto the minimap until like scroll up and down so I can see what my code looks like. It's fantastic when you've got like 2,000 lines of code. It's not as useful when you've got just 100 lines of code, but that's some of the features that are available. So again, that's one of the reasons why I like VS Code quite a bit. The other thing is the colouring, but let's just go back and have a look at this and just see what's mentioned. A text editor performed. Okay. I will sort of like mention this because I don't know if it will come up or not, but a lot of the editors do have this. Some of the web ones only have sort of like dark and light. You don't need that many colorizations, but I could go here and I think I've got the themes over here, and I can go to sort of like a color theme, and I'm using dark modern, but I could sort of like switch to another color theme like that, and now I've got a red one. Let me switch back to dark modern because I actually like that one. So color theme, and wherever it is, dark modern over there. But there's a whole bunch of them that are available out of the box, and VS Code lets you have hundreds and hundreds of these color themes. It lets you customize your own color theme. I tend just to stick with the one that's given. Every now and again, if something's really bugging me in some way, I might change the color code. But the point being that you can have a dark mode, you can have a light mode, relatively simply out of the box, and it's quite convenient like that. which when you're coding, say for example at night time or during like if you're in bright hours, you can change the colorizations anyway. It will damage your eyes a little bit less when you're looking at the screen for longer periods of time. So let's just jump back. We did see things that were also, I should mention, but we kind of like saw that we had something called indentation. That's important for those people who are using Python, because Python relies on indentation. So if I do write my code here, and in fact it's even highlighted in the for statement or even the define function, but I'll just do it again if we notice something. I'll do a for I in range, and I'm going to type this out myself this time without doing the complete, for I in range 10, so something like that. When I do a colon, if I move to the next line, Python relies on indentation. The default indentation, so I'll just do a print here, and then hello, hi there. Right. The default indentation in Python is 4, and the linter gives it naturally to you, and if I press return it will keep the same level of indentation until I want to get out of it. So that's quite nice for in Python. And I just wonder over here, when I finish the return, it jumps back, it knows we're at the end of the function, and it jumps back to the original level of indentation, and that's quite useful for coding. But that's not just actually Python code. If I was coding in other languages, the curly brace languages, even though they don't require indentation in order for them to work, whereas Python actually is a requirement to get the indentation correct. Indentation is nearly by default always used in those languages, and you're expected to sort of like indent, blocks of code, parts of functions will be indented, and for loops and if statements and so forth will also be indented in those functions, and the linter will give that to you for free. At least a good linter will. So we'll call that helpful as well. So let's just go on, and we've got an autocomplete. Again, you would have seen the autocomplete working as I was typing, and I find this extremely useful. And the reason why I find this extremely useful is it stops errors. Now, if I just delete all of this over here and I do something like I could import a module, we don't need to know what the import thing is, but notice one thing: the minute I start to type import, it already sort of like recognizes it. I pick out a module, select time, we see that it actually selects the modules that are available to me. Well, that's very nice because I now can't make an error. So I'll import the time module, but not just that, I can now do .time, and again, it's sort of like picked it out, already knows that I want to do time, and then it has a recognition for the dot for the autocomplete, and that exposes all of the methods available in the time module, so I won't ever get a typo because I could select them down the list. Now, if I wanted to do a sleep function, so time.sleep, again, I can't mistype the E for two reasons. One is that it's not colored in yellow. I was actually expecting this to also throw a squiggly underscore, but it didn't, but it's not highlighted in yellow, so I know that this wasn't picked, whereas from here it is like this, so I know that this is a valid function. And also when I do that over the function, it's recognized. This gives me a level of comfort as a user because I've actually got the docstring, the documentation for how the function works. And I can time.sleep, and it says there, right there over here, seconds, so I can time.sleep seconds. So the IDE has given me a lot out of the box, and I just run this piece of code, and it's just slept for exactly 1.0 seconds because I did time.sleep of 1. So all of that was very nice. And the one piece that I was going to mention that I didn't was actually the for loop. So if I wanted to make this code sleep for 10 seconds, I would do for I in range 10 like this, but I'm actually going to type the whole thing out, although I could just tab it and do it all. Oh, you know what I will do, because we already know about the indentation, I could then move. Here's another little trick: I could select move the line of code, and that was just with the alt and the down arrow, and tab it correctly. Again, we can see our tabbing for the indentation when it wasn't there. We've got this the pylance, which is our linter, is coming in saying expected indented block. Is telling me, the user, that I've done something that wasn't expected, so I can tab, and then all of those error messages disappear away. Now, I don't want to make this sleep for 10 seconds, but let's just make this sleep for maybe make it sleep for 5 seconds, so 0.5 like that, and the same piece of code. We could print a number after every half second as well, just to show that it is running. And notice how it remains inside this block of code until it gets outside of the indentation. So it's all catered for quite nicely in Python. So return. Let's just go back here and then print and then finish. Right, there we go. And we can run our nice little block of code, and it will do exactly as we expected and run things for 10 seconds or for 5 seconds every half second, printing a number, and then print finished. All very nice, all very readable, excellent for our IDE. The autocomplete was really nice. This one here is actually showing PyCharm. And I think a lot of the highlighting actually for the stuff below, because I had a quick browse, they do show PyCharm. PyCharm is a very popular IDE for Python users. I've seen a lot of like videos, and you know, the people doing the coding on the videos are quite often using PyCharm, so it's a very used one. I still will say that I probably see VS Code used a hell of a lot more, but PyCharm is a popular one by a lot of very good coders. Now we've got the automatic closing of brackets and speech marks. Again, we saw that over here. Nearly I take it as for granted, but you know, when I do a print, in fact, I don't even need to do that. You know, I can define a function like an array, so a list in Python. Square brackets, they automatically complete. I can define a tuple like this, curly brackets complete. I can define a set like this, or even a dictionary, depending on what we wanted. But all of these have auto-completed, and also inside of this I can put a quotation like that, and the quotations will have completed, and we get good type start typing inside of them straight away. And the same thing happens with double quotes. It's again nice and convenient. There, the quotations have closed themselves. So we got some nice features that we have in an IDE that, if we notice over here in our notepad, we don't get any of that. It's waiting for me to complete. So is this, and so is this. They were waiting for me to complete. The same with a single quote, and the same with a double quote. None of them have completed. I'm not sure. I don't think. Well, there won't be a setting in a notepad to do that. It's not the right sort of editor. There might be these sorts of settings in a Word document and things like that, where you've got this nice correcting of syntax, correcting. It will correct your grammar and it will correct your spelling. So this is the IDE is the equivalent of what a Word document might be, or a Google Doc for writing a letter, for example. So let's just move on that then. In that case, what else do we have here? Provides a list of variables already declared in your program as you start typing. Well, we kind of like did see that, but again, let's just, if I had the variable fish equals 10, dog equals 20, hippo equals, I was going to attempt to spell hippopotamus, but I won't, 30. If I start typing hip, we see that hippo, so we've got a nice autocomplete straight away. It's not really going to help very much when I type in fish because it's such a small word, but if I had sort of like number of fish, you know, it'd be much more useful here, and I would start typing in number. We see that it pops up straight away. And not only did it pop up straight away, but we see something else. It actually says number of fish, and our linter, in the case of Python, recognized that it was an integer, and it's actually telling us that as well. So fantastic. I've got the type hint as well as telling me what type it is. Not only is it telling me what variable, so I can't make the spelling mistake. Back in the day, I used to make thousands of spelling mistakes. You know, maybe I'd forget one of these underscores or spell fish wrong or whatever it is. That can't happen anymore with the autocomplete, and also I know that it's of type integer, so I can turn it into a 12, for example. So we've got those things as well that are given to us. And we saw the list of user-defined functions. So if I was to go back here, and I didn't want time.sleep, but I wanted something else, I could do time, and I could see a list of all of the methods that are available inside of the time module. And it's not just true for time. I could have imported another module, so import again. I will point this out. We can see that the import pops up to the top, and if I start typing in MAE, I was actually looking for math, so there we go. But I might have wanted a longer one like matplotlib. That's much more helpful, but I'm just going to do the math one by way of example. And I might want to do something like math dot sine of whatever I is over here, so something like that. And I might want to, and this is one nice feature, I can put brackets around it all in one go, and I can put a print statement in front of that, and we can see how conveniently that did all of that code for me. Enabled me to go extremely fast. I'm looking for that in a linter, and there we go. I'm printing sine of this number multiple times, so that's that. Now let's continue one more and take a further look at things. So we've got the user-defined functions, that's done. The automatic formatting. So this is showing well, the indentations. It mentions here languages such as Python, which strictly are required to be indented. But actually, as I mentioned before, in other languages where this is not the case, indentation is still used to improve the readability of code. That's applicable for nearly every single language, which in a way, funnily enough, is why indentation kind of like was forced upon Python coders, because it's nearly like given as a necessity to write clean code. But nonetheless, we could write our code without indentation like this in other languages. It wouldn't look nice. It's much nicer if we can do the indentation, and it's much nicer if our indentation is consistent, because one of the things that we can do in coding is something like this, which is define a function, and we've got one level of indentation here, so print there, and then hi there, and then we might write another function and def this other function, but this time we'll just put 2 levels of indentation over here. Now, so long as our indentation was correct, the linter is going to let this go ahead. So print hi lower indentation, something like that. I don't really even check the spelling of it, but we've got 2 levels of indentation here, and here we've got 2 white spaces for indentation over here, and here we've got 4. Now Python won't like it if we're inconsistent. It's going to throw an error, but so long as we've got the same level, it's fine. But one thing that we might want that the linter gives us is that we're just consistent, because between this function over here and this function over here, our code is starting to look, you could say, a tiny bit uglier, because why have we got these different indentation levels, and kind of like Python. So like Python does let you do that. It's like, okay, if you want to do that, and there are reasons why you might want to, in an odd exceptional case, do like lower levels of indentation, but generally, like, you know, because your code is going to be like deeper in terms of longer number of lines, or more indentation is required for whatever reason. But generally speaking, we like to have this consistency, and if the linter does it, you'll always get consistency. And I basically barely ever stray away from what the linter does. And funnily enough, actually, one thing that it does give is our code blocks are supposed to, or our lines of code are supposed to be 80 characters long, so that your lines don't get too long. And I'm provided with a nice convenient little, well, I've colorized it red here, but a nice convenient red line over here, so that my lines of code don't get too long, and then I can start doing other things to tidy up the code. But that's a side note, again, something that a good linter will offer. I'm just wondering, as I say that, if this linter here does that. We can actually configure it to a reasonable degree. This is the stock one that comes with it. Let's just have a look. We can do highlight line numbers and a few other bits. Just configure the IDE. There are things that we can do, some extra bits and bobs that we could sort of like muck around with. I just tend to use what's given out of the box, apart from turning it to a dark mode in general. Yeah, it does have a line width thing here, but I didn't see the line thing going or showing it, or at least it's got an initial screen size of 80 characters long, so it's probably made this box just wide enough to represent the same 80 characters that the above box has done, but it's actually put the line over there. So, you know, they've all got their pros and cons in that respect. Let's just go on a tiny bit more then, because I'm going to move on to the keyword highlighting, but again, it's kind of like nearly obvious in a way. Keyword highlighting, otherwise known as color coding or pretty printing, we could say it in all the different ways that we wanted to, describes the colors that an IDE automatically applies to your code as you type. This is an example of some JavaScript code here, but we see that the function's gone purple and the function name has gone blue, and then the arguments of the function are in grey. We see that the brackets opened and closed here are grey. On my particular IDE, I chose for them to be colorized. It's colorized in brackets. And we can see that the strings here are actually in green, and our integers or our numbers in JavaScript, because variables or numbers in Java, we don't have the concept of integer and float in the same way. It's just a number. Numbers are this, and our logical operators are the same color as our if statements and functions. So it's kind of like it's quite nice. It tells us a lot straight away. It's very, very visually helpful. And here again, we kind of like see it here, different colors are applied to different elements of your code. So we've got variables, command. What's a variable? A variable is orange in our particular case. A command here was purple. A function, at least the function name, was blue, if that's what it's referring to. The parameters here, they were grey. Our data types, if we had data types, I guess it would be a different color. So just things like that that are useful for us. Keyword highlighting is designed to support the readability of your code. Yeah, so again, that's the keywords. So for example, if I typed in function, and one thing that I might do as an error, for example, is let's just say I wanted to do I wanted to call my variable math. That would be terrible, but if I could, math now is highlighted in green, but if I said math equals 10, I wonder, well, I've actually just changed this into a, because I see that it's green, I've just created a variable that's overwritten a module, and I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to give it a different name, so I'd call it like my_math, and we see here that it's highlighted in a light blue on my particular linter, so I don't have these collisions. Even visually, it prevents that happening from the user. So that's all given to us. Automatic line numbering, I tend to, quite often it's switched off, and I always switch it back on. I don't know, it's a case of habit, but sometimes we get referred to error messages in our line numbers, and I wonder if I can manufacture an error here. So math equals plus, I don't know, I'll add a string onto here, times by true. I don't even know if this will fail or not, but let's just try and run it. Yeah, I do get an error message, and it shows here line number 4. I wonder if I can click on it and it will take me to, yes it does, but I could see that my error message, because it's a big arrow pointing, and it actually says points to line number 4. But more importantly is, even if it didn't, it would say error on line number 4. In fact, it does. It says it over here, and it gives us some hints. So I like to see the line numbers because it's good for capturing errors. Not that I make any errors whatsoever. I never make any errors, so I don't need line numbers. But anyway, that's our little piece of code over there. So quite nice. Let's continue with that then. So we've got the automatic line numbering. That's really nice. And again, we get it for all languages. And again, kind of like what I said, syntax here on line number 15, it tells you where to go as a user. So that's very helpful. Syntax checking. So this is something that we can do, and it happens to everyone nearly all of the time, but you can miss a semicolon or something like that on an IDE. So I could easily accidentally have missed this function over there, and straight away I've got this little squiggle, and it says expected it's expecting this, and funnily enough it doesn't prompt for a correction, although when I go there I can't, but it tells me that there we go, I put it back on and it should all be fine again. So let's just get rid of this little thing. But they're very easy things to do. Again, I could have forgotten a quote like this, and it highlights the whole thing red. When you get used to it, you sort of like know, and it even gives you a hint. It says the bracket wasn't closed, but actually it wasn't because of the bracket, it was because of the single quote over here. And if I was to do 3 quotations here and forget one over here, it throws in error messages. Now it throws in error messages further down because it doesn't know where the doc string ends or something, but nonetheless you do get this highlighting of an error pretty damn quickly. But more importantly, it was very hard for us to make the error because when we did our 3 quotes, so quote, quote, and quote, it automatically completed the other 3 quotes on the other side for us. So just not only does it make things faster, again it's reducing our chance of making an error in the first place, but if we did make an error, it was quickly able to highlight that to the user nearly straight away. So at least in semi-real time, should we say. The next thing we got is the runtime environment. I will run through this, but I've been doing everything so far in a Jupyter notebook over here. So my runtime environment is literally just right down below. But if I go here and delete all of this block of code, so I'll delete everything here and I will create a function. In fact, another massive reason for me selecting VS Code is it offers you 2 runtime environments. One, if I do down below, I've got this terminal down at the bottom, and this is the integrated terminal, which is a very, very nice feature. A lot of editors let you do this. So I've got a terminal down below, and I can do stuff down at the bottom, and I can run my code and it will output the result into a terminal. But the other thing is this hash percentage lets me use an interactive terminal, which is a hybrid between a Jupyter notebook and running in a terminal. Now I'll show you what I mean. I can do again a print of a hello world. If I can type, and I can run this, so I can hit F5 and it's going to run in the environment. You can see down here I've got a watch list. I should clear out all my variables for the watch list, but when it's run the code, I could put a breakpoint somewhere in here. We see this little red dot. I can click here and now it will break the code, so it will stop the code when it does run somewhere in there. I don't want to break this particular piece of code. I probably have done. So if I was to do I'll do a for loop for I in range 10, and then print out I like that. And then if I wanted to put a breakpoint here, and I could run my piece of code by hitting F5, it's going to then start running, and it would, when the code does run, don't know why it's taking so long to get around to it, there we go, and it stopped at the breakpoint, and I could go in here and look for the expression of I, and it says it's 0, and I could run one loop, or I could just run, so continue, and it's run, and now I is 1, and I could continue again, and I is 2, 3, 4, 5. We see 2 things happening. Not only are we getting the value of I over here, I could delete all of these, I'll just leave them there, but we also see that our code is being output sequentially line by line over here as we run it. So I could continue running the code. If we focus on this piece and this piece, we can see it running quite nicely for both of them. So that's generally how it goes. Let's just, I wonder if I can finish them all. Step over, and I don't know, I'll keep running. I'll just keep running it. 8, 9, and we'll finish at 9 because we went to range 10, and then it will break out of the code finally. There we go, that's the end of the program. So that is the debugger that's thrown in with most IDEs again. So anything else on that, I wonder? Not really, that's a quick version of it, but Python offered something else, which was the Jupyter notebook that I tend to use, and it offers the interactive Python. So if I wasn't debugging this way, I could do, without having this open, I could do a control return, and it will run all of this code that was written over here. It will run it over here in an interactive session, which is really nice. At the moment it's just connecting to the kernel, so when it does connect to the kernel, it'll run the code, and there we go, our block of code, the same block of code that was run down here is also now run over here. So that's quite nice, really nice feature that's offered by VS Code. I don't know if it's offered by PyCharm. Those people who are watching who do use PyCharm, maybe you could let me know on that. That would be quite useful to know if that does exist or doesn't, but that's a really nice feature of VS Code. We've seen some of the debugging tools. I won't go into it too much, but there's other extra pieces that we can do. We can put more stuff. We can do tests in the actual debugger and so forth, but we could certainly see our variables. So that was quite useful. What's this pseudocode triangle? I guess this is some Python code, I imagine. I don't know why it's giving us this pseudocode to try, but you know, I can sort of try this code. I think it's actually going to throw some errors because it's got the capitals here, which is quite nice because I could probably do the quick fix here. No, I can't. But we can see how we can fix this. Oh, in fact, this isn't even Python code; it's a different language. Because I would do for I again in range in Python, and then I would set, you know, however long we wanted to go. So like 2, for example. And again, I would need the colon here, my indentations. Let's have a little check. 1, 2, 3, only 3. If I do a tab, it will get me to 4 levels of indentation. That would be an if statement. This is a my underscore mod, maybe is like some sort of variable, but actually the variable here, if I hover over it, it says, well, it hovers over it. It's actually not defined. The if statement wasn't even completed anyway, you know. So again, we could go on and on, but like all of these error messages, I could syntax highlight and complete everything. This actually looked like Visual Basic was the original code. It is what it looked like. I'm quite sure that was VB. But if I had my VB editor on here, it would actually pick it up. One of the things that we can do is we can go and select any language. So I wonder if I could do Visual Basic over here. So something like that. And I wonder, just out of interest, if I was to copy this back in and paste it straight into the linter, like this, now it doesn't throw any of the error messages, so we can see that we can code in Visual Basic, at least for the syntax highlighting. It's all it would be corrected in the right way, and if I did forget something there, possibly, well, I do get this turns on white all of a sudden, whereas when I do then, I think no, it didn't. But I do get the syntax highlighting. I imagine that if I had the extra features on there, it would work. Let me just go back to Python, because I am coding primarily in Python, at least over here. And then we'll just go back to our print. Nothing at the moment, but just to have something clean. So, and if I run it again, it will run over here and we'll get our nice empty block now because there was nothing in there. So let's just move on our IDE. So we had some pseudocode in a different language. That was quite nice to have. The memory inspection, okay, that comes in on, I guess, other things, but there are tools that are available. I'm only going to showcase the tools for VS Code here, but basically one of the things that you have is a packet of extensions. And the thing about VS Code is you've got like literally hundreds and hundreds of extensions. These are the ones that are installed. Here's some that I recommended, but I don't know, like here's one that I've actually used, which is highlighting for a CSV file. It color codes, again, it makes things nice. So if I was to go and find a CSV file somewhere, let me just go and have a look for a CSV file. If I've got a test output.csv, there we go, although that's tiny, so that's not big enough to let's do a test. There we go, we get some nice colorizations on the CSV file that we wouldn't have if we opened it up in a standard CSV file. Another feature that's quite nice on CSV files, I think if it's there somewhere, open preview possibly, there we go, we can open it up in a kind of like in the little CSV editor. So it throws us these extra little features for free that are quite nice. Let me close some of these tabs because we're going to have too many open otherwise, and go back to the original. So let's just jump back. We've got I'll just go one extra bit here. On our extensions, there's literally hundreds of them. If I type in A, we need to see how many there actually are, because it's just literally loads. There are thousands of extensions for VS Code. You'll probably only use about, I don't know, 20 or 30 that are useful for you. You know, the ones that I have used here that are useful for me are for the Jupyter Notebook pylons. You know, I do sometimes, but rarely, code in C++. You know, so there's a whole bunch of C++ stuff here. Code Runner, that's something else. That's a couple of things if I want to look in an Excel file, but a lot of Python things other than that, and Markdown is one of the things I use. And we can see that like this has been downloaded 7.2 million times, so you know, quite popular. So there's a few different things and a whole bunch of other stuff, SQLite, Remote Explorer. So I can code with other people and link and sync and so forth, and do thousands and thousands of other things as well in this particular editor, which is why it's one of the market chosen ones. You can do a lot of stuff as well in editors like PyCharm, but VS Code I think tends to offer a bit more, so it's got a bit more popularity. Linkers and loaders. When programming, you may have used a library, for example, one that allows you to use functions to generate random numbers, and we can't extort this. This is a Python example here. They've imported random. I showed the example when I did the math module, so I did an import of math over here. But I could have done imports. I could have imported another module like random, and it automatically recognizes that random is an available module. And if I did import, in fact, import and then R, there'll be other modules that begin with R, like read for regular expressions, and there's some other ones. Request is a popular module, but that's one that you have to download. So I could import the request module, but anyway, I can do random and then dot, and it exposes all of the things that are available in the random module, so I can get a random integer between a start number of, I don't know, 10 and another number of 1,000. So now I'll generate 100. So now I'm generating a random number there, and I can assign a variable here. A equals this variable, and I could print out my variable very fast like that, and then I could hit F5 to run it. Notice one thing is that we've got the colorization, and what do I mean by colorization? Whilst this is running, this over here is a light color, and this or grayed out, and this one here is grayed out, whereas this one over here is higher, brighter color, and the reason why is because we've used it down here, so we can see the things that we have and haven't used quite conveniently just from the colorizations, which is very helpful again. And our little piece of code round down below, and we got number 48 at the bottom. That was a random number. We could keep on running that piece of code. I can run it again. So hit F5 and it runs it again, and it will generate another random number between 10 and 100. There we go. Our number now is 44. And I could do a for loop very fast for I in range, and again, let's just print out 10 random numbers. I'll get rid of the pass statement. Notice immediately that this isn't indented. It's telling us it needs to be indented. When it's satisfied it's got the right level of indentation, it's all fine again. We might want to delete the white space. We might not want to delete the white space, but the indentation needed to be there. And we could run our code and print out 10 random numbers after our in fact, we're going to print 10 of the same random numbers, so maybe we'd want to generate our random number here. So again, I will move this block of code. Some nice features. You can sort of like move the entire line of code, and I will tab it for the indentation. Notice the tab doesn't put a tab. It gives the user the option of selecting 4 white spaces. There's reasons why you want to use 4 white spaces and not a tab. And if I hit run again, it's now going to print 10 different random numbers. And we could also have done this in, we could have put a breakpoint in and done it in the debugger and seen all of the random numbers and so forth. So that's another extra little feature. I guess that's what's referred to as loaders. The thing that came after this, what I call the dot notation, it loaded all of the other modules that are available in the library. Stops spelling mistakes, helps us remember words. So the autopilot effectively is really good. Version control, again, there are things for version control where it highlights the different colorings of the versions. I won't go into showing that because I've shown quite a bit. And finally, a summary, I guess, allows you to edit the code and insert comments. I didn't even talk about comments, but I should just throw it in, I guess, quickly. But you know, this is a comment, right? That's a single line. This is a single line comment. And this is in Python, because other languages, a single line comment would be different. But in Python, you can also have a multi-line comment. So this is a multi-line comment. Notice that the multi-line comments are highlighted in a different color to single line comments. And notice when I do the 3 quotations, it automatically completed the 3 quotations. So here is another multi-line comment. Now, one thing that's quite useful is if I double click on multi-line, nothing's highlighted, but if I get rid of this multi-line, the space between the multi-line, I did this by accident, but if I double click on it, we can see this, and that's quite useful because it's highlighted both of the cases where the actual word was there. Because if I used a variable in multiple places, it will pull it out. Now here I've used a variable A, so A just picked out all of the A's, but we can see like a pattern recognition things also happening for free, given to us by the linter. We had our syntax checking, that was quite nice. We had our runtime environment. Okay, the linter, the IDE does this for us, as in it's all run. Here, this is our block of code. Block of code is over here, human readable code, and it's done. It does all of its processing and gives us an output here quite nicely in an output screen. Or, you know, when I did it in the interactive session, it gave us the output screen on the right hand side. Or if I did it in the Python notebook, it gave us the output just below the block of code. So nice convenient output for us as well. Where was I on that? And let's just go back. Keyword highlighting, so that was the colorizations, which is quite nice. We like that a lot. Debugging tools, again, very simple but effective debugging tools. We can put breakpoints in our debugger. We saw that we could do that with one click of a button and then to like run through the code, and the code will stop on the breakpoint. Memory inspector, which I didn't really go into, but we can inspect the contents of the memory. But one of the things is in Python, the reason I didn't go into it is in Python, and this isn't a Python tutorial, but we can go into the, we can inspect the memory in other ways. And Python doesn't tend to have memory leaks in the same way as other languages might have, such as like C++, because it does a memory counter and it works with memory in a different way. So less on memory leaks there, like it's not as prevalent, but if I was using one of the other languages, that would be much more important to me. Threading, the debugging tool allows you to see threads that are currently running. I didn't run a threading thing, but we could again take a look at like deeper and deeper into this. And I think that's pretty much about it. I've raced through quite fast. If you've got any comments or anything, any comments or observations that you want to make, any suggestions about IDEs that are better than VS Code, because you know, just because this is the one that I tend to use and you know the bulk of the market tends to use, there might be other up and coming ones that are better. There's certainly other online ones. By all means, go through and let's look at the online ones. And yeah, we've got things like the notebook and stuff, which for some reason I couldn't get running, but I'm sure I'll get it running 2 minutes after I close this video down. If you found this useful, hit the like button, the thumbs up button, the follow button, and all the other buttons. And even if you didn't find this useful, hit the like, follow, thumbs up, and all of the other buttons as well. And that's basically the features of an IDE, or what we want to use for the purpose of coding in any language that we wanted to use. And that's it. So I'm signing off. Thanks a lot for watching.